Let's explore some dairy-free options available at Dollar Tree. I'm following a similar process that I followed when I shopped for my gluten-free meals, reading the ingredients label for any milk, whey, or dairy derivatives. Also, of course, checking the allergy warnings, and if it said contains, may contain, or even may contain trace amounts of, I left it on the shelf. Their bouillon powders do say may contain trace amounts of milk, but their broths do not, so if you need broth, go for the liquid broth versus the powder. They do have a fairly decent selection of dairy-free milk options, including vanilla almond milk, original almond milk, and even recently they got oat milk in stock. They also carry cans of coconut milk as well. Their potato gnocchi doesn't have any milk ingredients in it, so that's an option paired with a meat sauce or even a cream sauce made with coconut milk. Both the flour and corn tortillas don't have any milk products in them, and the corn tortillas are also gluten-free for those who have both sensitivities. Prepared or convenience foods can sometimes be the challenge, but this beef pasta does not have any sort of milk ingredients in it. It does call for milk, but if we make it with water, as I usually do, then it would be a dairy-free option as well. I was thinking about making the pasta with meatballs, but their meatballs unfortunately have Parmesan cheese in them, so they're not dairy-free. I didn't have the Italian to compare to, I only had the homestyle to look at. Of course, any frozen vegetable that isn't in a butter or cheese sauce is a fair option, so I grabbed some seasoning blend to put in the pasta. The frozen tater tots are both gluten and dairy-free, and they look a little funny, but they're probably the best tasting tater tot I've ever had. They're very well seasoned. I thought about getting some pork and beans to go with the tater tots because the can was quite large, but I ultimately got 2 cans of baked beans instead because they're both gluten-free and dairy-free. These refried beans are vegan, so they're of course dairy-free, and they're pre-seasoned, so they're definitely my favorite refried bean choice at Dollar Tree. Despite the meatballs having Parmesan cheese in them, the original beef patties do not have any sort of cheese or milk product in them. I grabbed those along with a roll of sausage and a package of chicken hot dogs. I don't always show breakfast options, but these maple and brown sugar instant oatmeal packets don't have any sort of milk or dairy in them either. Even those with allergies sometimes need quick meals, so this beef stew appears to not have any dairy in it. Neither does the chili with beans or the chili without beans, although the chili without beans has wheat in it. For fun, I also picked up one of these Italian ice, which is gluten-free and dairy-free. So I spent $20 total on the ingredients I need to make 3 dairy-free dinners, and I will be posting the videos in the coming days, but I really enjoy how these challenges help me to think outside the box and look at ingredients I may have otherwise overlooked. I do try to include a source of protein and a vegetable in all of my meals as well to try to keep them as balanced as possible. Let's make some beef and bean chimichangas from Dollar Tree. While doing the shopping for this video, I was looking specifically for ingredients that didn't have any milk products in them for those who have a dairy sensitivity. However, if you are not dairy sensitive, feel free to top these with some sour cream and cheese. You'll need flour tortillas, a can of chili, refried beans, rotel, and corn. I'm using chili here because it's pre-cooked, so it's a fantastic substitute for taco meat for those who don't have a stovetop. I'm not even doing any cooking here at the beginning. I'm only adding the chili and beans into bowls so you can see what they look like. I also mixed my corn and rotel together, which I drained beforehand. This pack of tortillas played very nice and didn't stick together very much. I did have to do a little bit of fluffing, but not too bad. I think there is a difference between buying tortillas in the colder months versus buying them in the warmer months where they're more likely to stick together. To each of my tortillas, I added a small scoop of beans, a small scoop of chili, and some corn and rotel mixture, and then I folded these up into little burritos and set them aside. I did all 12 at one time. I don't even warm up the tortillas beforehand. As long as you don't overstuff them, you shouldn't have too much difficulty folding them. Here are my burritos when they're done. You have a couple of options here. You can freeze these and treat them just like you would a microwave burrito, or because I wanted to get the best presentation on this dish, I decided to make them into chimichangas, which is where you fry them in oil on all sides. I did also stick a couple in the air fryer because that comes up from time to time, and they don't get quite as golden brown, but they still get crispy. These fried chimichangas were super crispy on the outside, but smooth and creamy on the inside, and you did get that crisp corn on the inside that provided some freshness and some color and a hint of sweetness. I was on debate on adding the corn to it, but ultimately I think the corn was my favorite part. Trying Dollar Tree's hamburger helper for the first time. I was shopping specifically for a pasta dish that didn't have any sort of milk in it for people who have dairy allergies, and I stumbled across this beef pasta from Dollar Tree. It did call for milk on the package, but it didn't have any milk in the ingredients, so I made it with just water so that people who have a dairy allergy can still have a quick and easy dinner. So the base of this meal is 2 boxes of this Premier Pantry beef pasta, and then for an added vegetable, I threw in a bag of frozen seasoning blend. For the protein, I went with a roll of sausage and a package of Dollar Tree beef patties. I started by browning and crumbling my beef patties over medium-high heat. Dollar Tree doesn't sell a log of ground beef, but they do sell these beef patties, and I get a lot of questions about them. I find them to be a perfectly fine ground beef substitute, and the only thing I will say is that they're sometimes a little salty, but I have learned to mitigate that by draining them and rinsing them well in cold water. I also browned and crumbled my sausage over medium-high heat, and I did the sausage separately so that I could use the drippings from the sausage to saute the vegetables. I realized that the pot that I was using was not going to be big enough to hold all of the pasta, so I transferred it into a larger pot and continued to saute for a couple of minutes until some of the liquid had evaporated off. At this point, I added back in my beef crumbles and my 2 boxes of pasta. Each box of pasta said to add about 4 cups of liquid total, but I thought 8 cups would be too much, so I added 6, and that ended up being perfect. Lastly, just stir in your seasoning packets, bring this mixture back up to a boil, cover and simmer for 12 minutes. During that 12 minutes, stop and stir about 2 to 3 times to make sure everything cooks evenly and nothing is sticking to the bottom. Here's the finished beef pasta ready to go. All that's left to do is plate it up and try it. I was able to fill up 4 bowls and still had leftovers, and that was all for $6.25. Now, I think most of us grew up eating Hamburger Helper, so it's a very familiar flavor to all of us, but this one was kind of unique in the sense that it tasted a lot like beef stew, and you can actually see my gears churning a little bit as I'm contemplating using the pasta for one dish and using the seasoning packet to actually make a homemade beef stew. All in all, I was very happy with how this turned out. It was very rich and flavorful. If you're not allergic to dairy, feel free to throw some sour cream in this to give it a beef stroganoff flavor. I think that would be fantastic as well. Let's make a Dollar Tree Cowboy casserole. Now, technically, Cowboy casserole is slightly different than what I'll be sharing today. This dish does have a name, but I don't really like it, so I wanted to call it something a little bit more polite. You'll need a package of hot dogs. I'm using chicken hot dogs here, 2 cans of baked beans, 2 packages of frozen tater tots, and a bag of frozen green beans. I was sure to get packages that said gluten-free, that way this meal was both gluten and dairy-free. What I will say about Dollar Tree tater tots is out of the bag, they don't look the best. They're not very golden brown in color, and they're not very uniform overall, but they do have a really great flavor because they are very well seasoned. They have kind of a bit of a strong onion flavor to them. When I'm making tater tot casserole, I like to pre-bake the tater tots so they get extra crispy, so I started them in a 450-degree oven for 20 minutes. While my tater tots were baking, I removed any stems or strings from my green beans, and I chopped my hot dogs into 1-inch pieces. Hot dogs, I feel, get a really bad rap in the food community, but they are an inexpensive and affordable source of protein for a lot of people. I mixed together my hot dogs, green beans, and baked beans. I debated leaving the green beans out and just serving them on the side, but ultimately decided to put them in the casserole because green beans are fairly common in tater tot casserole. It simplifies things a little bit further, plus the green beans will be enhanced by the sweet, smoky flavor of the baked beans. All that's left is to pour your baked bean mixture into your casserole tray, top it with your tater tots, and return it to a 450-degree oven for 20 to 30 minutes. The amount of cook time just depends on how crispy you want the tater tots on top. I also think that this is a very kid-friendly meal, especially if you serve the green beans on the side, so that comes down to personal preference. This is essentially a casserole version of Beanies and Weenies. It costs about $7.50 to make and will feed 4 to 6 people.